it now. Well, good morning, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome to the first Delphi Economic Forum in Skopje and to a very timely panel discussion titled Delivering on the EU Promise, Seeing is Believing. This is a hybrid event. Here with us is the Ambassador of the EU to the Republic of North Macedonia, Mr. David John Geer. Online, we have Gasper Dovzan, State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Slovenia, and we are waiting for Mr. Nikola Dimitrov, Deputy Prime Minister for European Affairs of the Republic of North Macedonia. Very timely, since yesterday yet another General Affairs Council was not able to deliver a long promise, that is to give the green light for the first intergovernmental conference for both North Macedonia and Albania. I do not know whether we have Mr. Dovzan, the State Minister of Slovenia, with us. Okay. We have with us Deputy Prime Minister Nikola Dimitrov. Good morning. I will begin with a very timely question, Mr. Deputy Prime Minister, to you. We've lost track on how many General Affairs Council were not able to open accession talks with North Macedonia and Albania, despite the fact that there has been pressure by certain EU member states, surprisingly including France, this time, but with no results. Those responsible do have a name. First of all, how do you assess the European Union's inability to find ways to deal with the issue, and how feasible it is for North Macedonia to begin accession talks this year? Thank you.
Thank you so much for the questions, and apologies for being slightly late. I just met representatives of the Greek government who are here for this forum. I'd like to praise this initiative, and I hope that this pilot gathering today in Skopje will become a regular annual gathering, because I see it as a great tool to further the friendship and tangible cooperation between Greece and North Macedonia. This is not an easy question for me, coming after the General Affairs Council meeting of yesterday. And I've spent these last weeks and months talking at various panels in different European capitals about how important it is to finally make a move. The promise that Europe made to the Balkans took place in Thessaloniki many years ago, in 2003. It was reaffirmed in Sofia, 2018. We also had a Western Balkans EU summit in Zagreb, virtual, and we're going to have another one on 6th of October in Ljubljana this year. The topic, the title of this panel, Seeing is Believing, from Latin videre est credere, is, I think, telling. As Vice Prime Minister for European Affairs, it's becoming more and more difficult for me to talk to the people, to my people, to the citizens, and to maintain the narrative that this is really possible. We really need movement. This region is surrounded by member states. Economically, politically, historically, culture-wise, we belong to Europe. And it is really important that we see concrete decisions and movements to support and to deliver upon the promise made in Thessaloniki. We don't have an alternative, but becoming a functional European democracy that comes together with economic prosperity. We will continue to do reforms because we do them for us. But the tool accession process, which is a reform tool, will help us to do it better. Regardless of whether we start accession talks or not, our path is clear. We're going to continue to work on becoming a European democracy. But it's also important, and I realize that so many ministers are now publicly stating this is also now an issue for the EU itself. And in a way, this bloc is not only over North Macedonia's European future, it's also blocking the policies of the European Union towards the Balkans. So we are in this, in a way, together. We either have a failure on all sides, including our neighbors in Bulgaria, or we have a win-win-win. We did everything that we could. We are open, we are honest, and we believe that a European solution in line with European values is possible. But my public line is, when this happens, we should be positively surprised. We have a responsibility towards our people to protect them, because when people go through a hopeful moment and then they're disappointed, and this is repeating from June 2018 almost at every 3 to 6 months, this is not healthy for the nation. So I'll stop here.
Do we have State Minister Dovzan with us? I cannot see whether Mr. Dovzan is with us, so I'm continuing, if you allow me, with Ambassador Geer. The European Union yesterday, Ambassador, once again failed to deliver on enlargement. And allow me to remind you and the audience that the European Union was created to also end nationalism in Europe, yet today the future of some countries in the Union is being held hostage by nationalism. How do you respond to this, and should bilateral issues stand in the way and block the entire European Union's moving forward? Thank you.
Well, good morning, and thank you very much for this initiative. I also would like to praise this initiative. I'd like to thank in particular the organizers, the Delphi Economic Forum and the Hellenic Business Association. I should also like to say this is a real pleasure to be at an event, not quite normal, it's still hybrid, but it's a real pleasure to be at an event where I can actually see people and not being restricted to a Zoom screen. I would also like to convey the apologies of Commissioner Várhelyi, the Commissioner for Enlargement, who unfortunately at short notice was unable to join us today. I think I recognize the disappointment the Deputy Prime Minister has just expressed, and indeed was expressed yesterday by the Swedish Foreign Minister who was in town. I think we all want to see the opening of negotiations as soon as possible. But we do need to keep a clear head. The fundamentals are unchanged. The promise and commitment which was made in Thessaloniki is clear and alive. The region is an integral part of Europe. It's logical. It's geographically surrounded by member states. Its past, present, and future is intrinsically linked with the European Union. So in short, it's logical that the future of the Western Balkans lies in the EU. And this is something we need to keep very much in mind, and this is the strategic goal of the European Union. As we're an economic forum, I should just mention, looking at the economic figures which show how closely we're entwined. 68% of the region's trade is with the European Union, 60% of its foreign direct investment. At the same time, I would like to recognize full support for the efforts of the presidency to try to overcome the current situation. They've made a remarkable job. And since we have always been calling on for governments to resolve issues bilaterally, we should also recognize the sincere efforts that have taken place recently, in which the Deputy Prime Minister mentioned. Now, but progress has been made, but work needs to continue. as soon as possible. And the task will now pass to the Slovene presidency to move forward and try to resolve this issue so we can open the negotiations as soon as possible. So now is the moment when we all of us, need to keep engaged. And I'm very confident that by keeping engaged, we will achieve our goals. This discussion, though, should not obscure 2 points which I would like to make. First of all, the road to the European Union is a road of reform. It's the fast route to the European Union. But reforms are not only in the interests of the European Union, it's in the interest of citizens for a more secure, prosperous, democratic country, and also to reverse trends such as the youth brain drain. Actually, no country can afford not to carry out reforms in this current world. Rule of law, where we have a green revolution, where jobs need to be adapted to the current demands, where we need to make the most of the digital opportunities, and we need to integrate the economy into the economy of the European Union. And North Macedonia has made substantial advances. Rule of law, the fight against corruption, democratic goals, and also on good neighbourly relations. Of course, more is needed. As I've said, the path to the European Union is through reform. And by taking reforms, North Macedonia will inevitably move closer to the European Union. And with the opening of accession, each reform taken means that the path to the Union is shorter. The second message I'd like to say is that the European Union is here to stay. I invite you to travel to any town and most villages in the country, and you'll see the support for the European Union, and virtually in all sectors. So we are here, and we have been supportive throughout. We will continue to be so. You know, more than 100 million euros in assistance is spent per year in support of the reform process in North Macedonia. And when the European Union was looking at its own recovery plans from the COVID-19 pandemic, it included the Western Balkans and put on the table the economic and investment plan, which leverages up to 29 billion for the Western Balkans. So in short, we need a clear heads, as the Deputy Prime Minister has already said. We need to keep focused on the strategic goals, continue to engage. Reform is essential, but the EU will accompany the reform process at every stage. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador. Now, I think we can connect to Slovenia and the State Minister Dovzan. Good morning from Skopje, State Minister. Slovenia is taking over the European Union's presidency in a few days. The Portuguese EU presidency has taken initiatives to overcome the stalemate in the Skopje-Sofia dispute, but with no results. Will you continue, and how, these efforts, and are you perhaps planning any different strategy? I would like all gentlemen to be as short as possible. Thank you. Thank you, Minister.
Thank you very much. Thank you for inviting me, giving me this opportunity to speak. Let me, in short, say a couple of words. Of course, sustainable development, stability, and prosperity of the Western Balkans is vital and strategic interest of Slovenia and of the EU. And the region is, of course, part of Europe. It is surrounded by EU member states. So when we discuss issues related to the future of our continent, we must include the region. Of course, it is not only geography that unites us. There are challenges that are common to all of us, such as migration, climate change, but also cybersecurity, etc. And we need to fully grasp the fact that all those issues can only be successfully addressed together. So in addition to EU's geopolitical ambitions, can only be realized through stable and prosperous Western Balkans. So therefore, our clear goal must be bringing the region closer to the EU and ultimately in the EU. With this in mind, allow me to present briefly the plans of our presidency as regards the Western Balkans. We will focus on three interconnected pillars. First, we will try to give a boost to a credible continuation of the EU enlargement process. It is fundamentally important to start the negotiations with North Macedonia and Albania as soon as possible, and to open new chapters with Serbia and Montenegro. The Portuguese presidency has invested quite some time and energy, but unfortunately it was not, the political conditions didn't allow to make the step forward. So we are confident that during our presidency, we'll be able to contribute to achieve those goals, especially when it comes to the first IGC with North Macedonia. So secondly, we will be focusing on the implementation of the economic and investment plan, and therefore on the deepening of cooperation with the region on the areas of all mutual interest. We also count that further progress in the implementation of common regional market will be achieved when it comes to the connections within the region. And thirdly, Slovenia will offer platform in order to make further steps in searching for solutions of the remaining open issues. They hinder regional cooperation, reconciliation efforts, and of course, prevent a better focus on the questions of tomorrow, such as economic recovery, sustainable development, and green agenda. When discussing the future, we also need to emphasize the importance of the economic and investment plan for the Western Balkans. We see it as a most valuable tool that complements the enlargement methodology and accession process. It is a tool which should speed up the economic recovery, promote socio-economic development, and contribute to greater convergence as regards the economic systems. And it is especially important that the plan pays a lot of attention to the issue of building a positive perspective for the youth, since the youth really need realistic and touchable opportunities to fulfill their potential in the region. And during our presidency, we will strive to strengthen connectivity in the areas of transport, energy, digitalization, environmental sustainability, and the promotion of green technology. Special attention will be paid to decarbonization of the region and green lanes concept. We will also seek to strengthen cooperation on research and innovation, including by countries of the region joining the Horizon Europe program, which will accelerate the integration of the region into the European research area. And finally, we believe that our engagement with the Western Balkans should include more action-oriented and unified approach towards resilience, capacity building, especially when it comes to cybersecurity in the region of the Western Balkans. So let me conclude by a strong commitment that Slovenian presidency will take all these issues as a high priority in the second half of the year. Strategic use of the enlargement policy, as well as the implementation of the economic and investment plan, will be part of the agenda of the EU Western Balkans Summit that will take place early in October in Slovenia. So I guess we have quite broad agenda, but also some deliverables in sight. So we will make all our efforts to achieve those results together with you. Thank you very much.
Well, thank you, Minister Dovzan. Gentlemen, we only have 10 minutes left, so please be as brief and short as possible. Deputy Prime Minister Dimitrov, is the delay to start accession negotiations harming your government's stability, and if so, to what extent? And how does your government plan to address the public's understandable growing frustration? Thank you.
In a way, the start of accession talks with the EU is one of the key elements of our narrative, our political narrative in the last 4 years that started on 1st of June 2017. So to some extent, whether we can deliver on our promise to the people, we depend on whether the EU delivers on what many European ministers say. You delivered, now it's our turn. We are doing everything that we can. I think it's critical that we push the agenda at home. Joining Europe is about changing your societies and countries. So the ultimate goal, I think, is we can achieve it if we focus on the reform agenda at home. Democracy issues, freedom of the media, rule of law, fight against corruption, better jobs, more economic cooperation with our neighbors. And since I think this is an economic forum, inspired by now the world-famous Delphi one and organized by it, and we are in hopefully post-COVID circumstances, we have to make use of the 9 billion euros in the economic and investment plan for the region. Many of the member states, part of this region, are getting recovery funds from Europe. And I think we need to join forces, think strategically. Orama is a word I know, have a vision for this, so that we jumpstart at home to be credible in the eyes of the European Union, and this is why we also need the European Union to be credible in the eyes of the people of the Balkans. And I think this is the equation for a success. Thank you.
Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Dimitrov. Do we have Minister Dovzan with us? No, there is a technical...
Yes.
Okay. Minister
Yes.
Dovzan, the stalemate regarding the beginning of EU accession talks for both North Macedonia and Albania is for many unjustifiable, so undermining the European Union's credibility. Could the idea of abolishing unanimity in joint EU foreign policy making, as recently raised by German Foreign Minister Heiko Maas, be a solution even to this problem? And do you agree with this idea? Thank you. Could you please be as brief as possible? Thank you.
Thank you very much. Well, I think we have to divide. I mean, we can speak about foreign policy questions, especially in the debate within the conference on the future of Europe. Here, I think we have some possibilities, because for this we don't need a treaty change, but we are only speaking about foreign policy questions. When we are speaking about enlargement, we are definitely at the end coming to the question of the treaty change, so we cannot avoid unanimity. If one country wants to join the EU, all member states have to ratify that treaty. So here we have to be careful and not try to mix all questions in the same box. So one thing, foreign policy, it's possible. We have a debate on this. Enlargement, questionable, at least when it comes to the final step, accession, where we definitely need unanimity.
Thank you so much, Minister Dovzhan. The same question goes to you, Ambassador Geer, about the abolishment of unanimity in the foreign policy making decisions, and plus is decoupling off the table in case the stalemate in the dispute between Skopje and Sofia continue. Thank you. You have 2 minutes. Thank you.
Thanks very much. I think the answer has been given rather clearly that we have to avoid mixing up different questions. The goal at the moment is to move forward on the negotiations. The way forward is for all of us to continue to engage in order to achieve that result. Issues of reform of the common foreign and security policy and the voting rules there, and also the issue of enlargement and voting on that, I think is separate, something which can be discussed in the broader context, the conference on the future of Europe, but this is a much longer term issue. So I think we need to focus on our efforts to move forward and achieve our goal. On the question of decoupling, I think it's been very clear. The Union wants to see moving forward on both North Macedonia and Albania as soon as possible, and that has been repeated on numerous occasions, including yesterday following the General Affairs Council, so no decoupling.
That has been quite clear. So I'm going back, if you allow me, Deputy Prime Minister, to Minister Dovzhan. There has been much talk in the Balkans about recent non-papers advocating redrawing of borders. How does Slovenia, especially as the upcoming EU presidency, stand vis-à-vis this issue? Thank you so much. Please be as brief as possible. Minister Dovzhan.
I think it's difficult to comment non-papers if they don't exist. But I guess there are, I already said, a couple of regional political questions that have to be resolved since we see that they prevent us to focusing on the future. But I think here, of course, the region has the ownership. The international community can facilitate, and this is why we have special representatives for. And I think the more the region does and the countries that also have those questions, the better will it be, and the more easy it would be to continue and enhance the enlargement process.
Thank you so much. Well, we are running out of time. I wish I had made this question to you, Ambassador, as well. Last question to Deputy Prime Minister Nikola Dimitrov. It's about the Prespa agreement. We are 3 days after the 3rd anniversary of its signing, and you are definitely one of its architects, and nothing could have been possible, including this Delphi Economic Forum, without the Prespa agreement. So the question is, are you concerned about any possible hiccups regarding the implementation of the agreement? There was certainly a creative ambiguity, if you allow me, in some of the provisions of the agreement, that is, some issues are leaving room for different interpretation between the two countries. And we've seen that in the case of the participation of North Macedonia in the Eurocup. How such matters could be better handled between the two countries, since these still poison relations between the two peoples and definitely do not help the atmosphere between the two countries. Thank you so much.
Thank you for this question. There was a recent poll that showed, I think, encouraging signals. First of all, about the balance under the terms of the agreement. Equal number of people from both sides of the border see it as harmful, about 35%. So I think this is telling as to the type of the compromise we made. Second, I think we did something really, really big, And we are now in a stage where implementation matters. Many things have been done, and we need to continue. The key is to have both countries, in particular both governments, but also the societies, the special responsibility lies with the governments, to focus on implementation under the Prespa agreement and to deal with any issue that will come. No agreement is perfect, and there will be issues that will come, in the spirit of mutual respect and close cooperation, and use the terms of the Prespa agreement to overcome them. If we manage to do that, we're going to have a positive dynamic where issues will be solved and where cooperation will be more visible to the people. The alternative is to have a negative dynamic. This is a blame game, less and less. So I think we need to stick to the more and more. I think there is a huge potential. And I really wouldn't want to see a situation where we have to go back to where this started. This is too important. In some ways, that's why many call it historic. So we should not take things for granted, though. And we should focus in the spirit that we have between the two governments and the two countries and solve everything that comes our way and move forward. Thank you.
Thank you so much. Thank you, Deputy Prime Minister Nikola Dimitrov. I would like to also thank Gasper Dovzan, State Secretary at the Ministry of Foreign Affairs in Slovenia, and of course, David John Gear, Ambassador of the Delegation of the European Union to the Republic of North Macedonia. Thank you all. Thank you all for being with us. Stay for the next panel. It's a fireside discussion with the Polish ambassador here in the Republic of North Macedonia. Thank you all.